Do you remember that moment when reality feels strangely heavy, your thoughts slow, and the entire scene seems to freeze? A void appears within you. Everything momentarily loses its vibration, and you involuntarily withdraw as an observer. This is precisely where quantum collapse begins, that zero point where your consciousness recedes from the scene and the universe doesn't know how to reshape. You often mistake this for fatigue, sometimes a distraction, sometimes a slight sense of disconnection. But what's actually happening is that the quantum field recognizes the gap in your attention and resets all possibilities. Because as long as you observe, reality continues to flow in a straight line. But when your eyes, attention, and energy withdraw, the universe stops watching you, and a momentary unstable silence ensues. This silence isn't frightening. On the contrary, it's the gateway to the universe's most creative point. Zero point isn't an absence, but an explosion of potential. When your mind quiets, thousands of timelines vibrate simultaneously, waiting to find which one aligns with yours. That's why those brief pauses you sometimes experience, those moments when it feels like your life is going nowhere, are actually moments when the infrastructure of your own destiny is being rearranged. As you retreat, reality begins to listen for your next frequency signature. Because the observer effect isn't just about looking. The intent with which you look, the emotional tone you vibrate, and the level of consciousness you're at, all change the mathematics of reality. When you stop following something, the energy you've invested in it also ceases, and this interruption causes the associated probability to begin to collapse in the quantum field. That's why some relationships, some problems, some fears in your life eventually disappear on their own, because you stop observing them consciously. They can no longer maintain their energy. They dissolve like a hologram whose light has been cut off. And this dissolution phase is a far more sacred moment than you might think. Because when you enter zero, nothing is fixed. Even who you are, what you want, and where you're going can be rewritten. What may seem like an insignificant moment of inner silence to you is a major recalculation process for the universe. In a sense, it halts your entire story, reevaluates all scenarios, and intends to create only those that align with your frequency. Therefore, if you fill the zero point with fear, anxiety, or emptiness, the universe will also take this vibration into account. However, if you enter this space with clear awareness and a conscious abandonment of observation, you will consciously determine the core of your new reality. That's why sometimes those moments when you feel like you can't do anything, when you feel like you can't move forward, are actually the most critical thresholds in your life. They are moments when reality takes the opportunity to reposition itself, taking advantage of your gaze being withdrawn. Perhaps the stillness you feel at that moment is the universe telling you, choose your next version. Because at the quantum level, nothing can exist without being observed. Without your attention, no possibility can become certain. Therefore, every moment you step back, you actually open up a new beginning for yourself. The zero point isn't an ending. It's a deep, unseen doorway that determines everything, where all possibilities converge in the same hum, where the birth pangs of a new self are felt. And passing through that door often begins with simply breathing and allowing reality to listen to you again. Because when the observer steps back, reality holds its breath and whispers, which version of yourself are you choosing now? So don't underestimate that emptiness within you. Perhaps the entire universe is waiting for your next move. Reality isn't a scene that remains static as long as you observe it. It's a vast matrix of possibilities constantly reorganized by consciousness, and every glance, intention, fear, desire, or inner vibration you're not even aware of sends a new command to this matrix. This is why the recurring events in your life, the endless cycles, the reappearance of the same people in different bodies, or the reshaping of similar situations back to you are no coincidence. They are echoes of your mode of observation. How you see something transforms it. How you interpret it solidifies it. How you feel it increases its weight in reality. The quantum field isn't a system defined as an independent force outside. Rather, it's a living structure that detects even the slightest frequency shift in your inner world and instantly restructures accordingly. Therefore, when you observe an event, its energy intensifies, and when you stop looking at it, its form dissolves. However, because most people fail to grasp this point, they almost always direct their attention to their fears, anxieties, things they don't want to lose, or things that have hurt them in the past, and the universe amplifies this observation on the level of reality. This is a much deeper mechanism than the superficial explanations of popular concepts like the law of attraction, because here it's not just the power of thought that's decisive, but also the direction of the flow of attention and the frequency tone in consciousness. This is why when you constantly observe a possibility, that possibility becomes the dominant reality. The quantum field perceives the continuity of observation as an ongoing command. This is the result of similar relationship dynamics constantly entering the same person's life, the recurrence of the same failure patterns, or the last-minute misses of certain opportunities. As long as the observer remains in the same place, reality continues to take the same form. Shifting the attention of consciousness from one point to another seems like a small movement at first glance, but at the quantum level, this creates a giant rupture. For example, you may have noticed why, when you stop paying attention to a worry every day, the impact of that worry diminishes rapidly, because it was your continued observation that anchored it at the quantum level. When your attention is withdrawn, that possibility loses its energy, its vibration collapses, and it falls outside the field. The universe follows your attention. Therefore, whatever you look at magnifies it, whatever you connect with highlights it, and whatever you fear, you hear its echo more frequently. However, this isn't a system that punishes you. It's a mechanism that invites you to awareness. Because the quantum field shows you this. When the direction of your observation changes, so does the direction of reality. The frequency signatures you carry in your subconscious are also part of this process. For example, someone who feels worthless might mistake events in the outside world that produce worthlessness as coincidences, yet this is actually the frequency of worthlessness echoed throughout the universe. The more you observe an event, a person, a possibility, the more visible it becomes. Therefore, the patterns in your life are projections of the emotional tones you haven't changed in your inner world. Reality follows you. It follows your frequency, not your steps. You see evidence of whatever you believe inwardly in the external world because the universe is programmed to confirm the observing consciousness. When consciousness ceases to observe something, the universe ceases to maintain its form. Therefore, understanding how reality works is far more powerful than trying to dominate it. You change reality not by forcing it, but by establishing a frequency harmony with it. Because the universe accepts what you see with your energy, not your eyes. Sometimes, the smallest inner shift you make without even realizing it, softening a thought, no longer harboring a fear, no longer identifying with a person, can lead to a massive restructuring of reality. That's why recognizing your inner observation mechanism is the beginning of a transformation. When you decide what to continue observing and what to stop observing, the universe begins to follow the new direction. And what most people forget is this: observation is an intention. Intention is a frequency. Frequency is the architecture of reality. Therefore, the way reality takes shape as you watch is nothing more than the external reflection of your inner universe. When you recognize this mechanism, you begin to see that many of the things you thought of as coincidences throughout your life are actually choices within your conscious field. The universe takes shape as it watches you, but first it awaits the direction of your gaze. So even though it may seem like you're not in control of reality, in reality, the whole game begins and ends with where your eyes focus. The silent phase of collapse is an invisible veil of consciousness that most people pass through without realizing it. But in reality, it's where life's most critical transformations arise. During this phase, while the external world appears to flow at nearly the same speed, a slowdown, an inward folding, a dissolution, and a profound vibrational shift occur within your inner reality, preparing for reconstruction. In this phase, your old identity, your old habits, thoughts you realize don't belong to you, and the emotional burdens you carry recede behind an invisible fog. Within this fog, you begin to sense what truly belongs to you and what is merely a reflection of your observing consciousness, perpetuated over the years. This is why this period feels like a meaningless void to most people. The old self isn't completely gone, but the new self hasn't arrived either. And feeling stuck between these two states is a natural symptom of collapse. This void isn't a loss, but rather a gap through which consciousness attempts to expand its own scope. Even if nothing seems to change from the outside, within your inner world, the entire structure of reality is quietly disintegrating. Old frequency patterns lose their vibration, and some possibilities begin to disappear on their own because you stop observing. This silent phase is often experienced by people as restlessness, a loss of motivation, a slight disorientation, or the question, why doesn't anything feel right? But in reality, this state is an indication that the veil of consciousness is inviting you to its center. Because when you stop observing a possibility, that possibility loses its form in the quantum field. Each dissolved possibility makes room for a new one. And this transitional space inevitably creates a sense of stillness. This stillness is not the immobility of the soul. It is the ebb and flow of the last vibrations of the old self. During this phase, people often assume something is wrong, but quite the opposite. Everything is going exactly as it should. The veil of consciousness blurs the surface of reality because consciousness temporarily blocks external reference points for an internal restructuring. This is why the people around you may seem more distant, sounds more muffled, the tasks you perform less meaningful, and even time itself may seem more fluid or chaotic. Time is not linear here. It stretches according to the vibration of consciousness, because when the focus of the observing consciousness shifts, the sense of time's flow also changes. The silent phase of collapse is actually a kind of energy quarantine. In this quarantine, consciousness separates you from the frequency patterns you've carried for years. because to completely collapse a cycle, the observation energy given to that cycle must first be completely cut off. During this interval, when observation energy is cut off, your old habits no longer call to you. Old thoughts no longer feel as powerful, and the echoes of the past fade away. But because nothing new has yet arrived, you feel directionless. This transitional space is inevitable because the vibration of the new self has not yet fully established while the old self dissolves. However, it is precisely in this transitional space that the greatest leaps in consciousness occur. When you are alone with your own silence, without internal pressure or external guidance, the first true clues about who you are begin to emerge. As the curtain of consciousness closes, what is most felt is the faint echo of the question, "Who am I?" This question isn't like an anxiety ringing in the inner void, but rather like the first sign of a new self about to emerge. For each collapsed reality brings you closer to your own. Every emotional surge experienced during the silent phase may actually be calibrating the new frequency of consciousness. People sometimes confuse this silent phase with depression, as energy plummets, desire wanes, and activity diminishes. But this isn't depression. It's the universe drawing you into a calm state for re-establishment. A first condition for emergence is the complete dissolution of the old form. As you release the old, the new quietly approaches. Therefore, the silent phase of collapse is actually the curtain of a beginning, an invisible, silent, and often misunderstood beginning. It's the phase where your soul breathes again. The shadow of your old identity dissipates, and you return to your own true vibration. And in this phase, as your reality quietly collapses, you unknowingly prepare for rebirth, allowing the new self to emerge with clarity and purpose. The phase of collapse and recreation is the most delicate yet powerful reconstruction process of existence, following that dark void where consciousness quietly collapses. In this phase, the vibrations of your old identity have receded. The emotional patterns that have tied you to the same timeline for years have lost their energy, and your powers of observation have ceased to sustain old realities. What remains is only the raw state of your essential frequency. This raw state often manifests itself as a slight uncertainty, an uneasy feeling of freedom, and the question, what happens now? But this question comes not from fear, but from the emergence of a new creative space. For after every collapse, the universe opens a door for your consciousness to choose a new direction. This door no longer carries the vibrations of your old self. Therefore, some things no longer affect you, some people feel foreign, and some dreams lose their weight. This is not because you have changed, but rather because you have moved closer to your true frequency. A frequency signature is a unique vibration carried within each person's soul. This vibration is like an invisible signature that attracts events, people, and possibilities. But many people fail to recognize this signature throughout their lives because their identities, the expectations of their surroundings, the roles imposed by society, and the traces of the past obscure this signature. This is the miracle of the collapse phase. When the old identity collapses, the frequency signature becomes visible for the first time. This visibility doesn't emerge as a moment of great enlightenment. Rather, it reveals itself through small, silent, almost imperceptible changes. For example, it's no coincidence that your patience with those who consume you is waning. Your frequency no longer accepts that vibration, or the silent entry of a new interest, a new thought, a new intuition into your life is the beginning of a completely conscious creation. The universe slowly begins to reveal possibilities that align with this frequency. What we call recreation is not an action, but a process of attunement, because at the quantum level, no reality is created by force. Everything you force generates vibrational resistance. True creation is based on frequency harmony. Possibilities that align with your vibration emerge in your reality. That's why some people make giant leaps to experience major changes in their lives, but they fail because their internal frequency remains the same. Yet sometimes, simply letting go of an emotion, forgiving a thought, or de-energizing a fear can change the entire direction of your reality. Your frequency signature does this. It pulls you into a new reality like the center of gravity. From the outside, this restructuring in the quantum field may seem like luck, coincidence, or being in the right place at the right time. But in reality, nothing is chance. Everything is the universal response to the frequency signature your consciousness has recalibrated. One thing to be aware of during this process is this: the debris of the old frequency can still call you back. A collapsed cycle sometimes tries to reactivate. This is because old recordings in your unconscious have kept you in that vibration for years. Therefore, the recreation phase often begins with a transition that feels like a transition between two worlds. The old calls to you, but it no longer fits. The new calls to you, but it doesn't yet feel familiar. The most important thing here is not to reobserve the old frequency, because observation can reactivate the old possibility even after the collapse. New people enter your life, and you try to understand why this entry is so easy. But the answer is simple. Your frequency has changed. These people are souls whose vibration already aligns with your new signature. In a sense, the universe connects you with a reflection of yourself. And as the process of recreation deepens, you suddenly begin to see yourself more clearly. You feel less hesitation when making a decision, less fear when taking a step, and more confidence when approaching a new experience. Because you feel that your consciousness, vibration, and observation are now aligned, this is a silent sign of spiritual integration. Your frequency signature is now working for you. It protects, guides, warns, and pushes you toward true possibilities. The transition from collapse to recreation is a timeline shift. The old reality can no longer hold you, and the new reality presents itself to you. And this process begins not with major storms in the external world, but with a small but powerful vibration within. This vibration is your essential signature. The universe reads this signature and rearranges your reality based on it. Therefore, your frequency signature is not just an energy, it's an invisible seal that determines your entire future. And when you align with that seal, reality doesn't just change, it opens up for you. The power of withdrawing from observation is a cosmic law that most people use without realizing it. But when brought to their consciousness, it can change the entire course of life. The universe interprets your observational energy as a command and moves to reorganize any area you stop looking at. Therefore, when you constantly monitor a fear, it deepens. When you focus on a worry daily, it grows. When you constantly consider a possibility, its likelihood of realization increases. But similarly, when you no longer nurture a thought, no longer hold an emotion, or no longer observe a cycle, that reality begins to recede from the scene. People often express this state as, the issue has resolved itself, or it doesn't bother me anymore. But what has happened is much more profound. The withdrawal of consciousness has vibrationally reduced that possibility to avoid. Because the universe abhors a vacuum, it fills this space with a higher frequency. This mechanism is invisible to outsiders, but it is evidence of an extraordinary order operating at the quantum level. The moment the observational energy is withdrawn, form dissolves, because observation itself is the force that anchors a reality. Whatever your attention is focused on, the universe marks it as an active file. Whatever you let go of, the universe closes that file. This is precisely why some relationships fade away on their own. Some problems resolve unexpectedly. Some people quietly disappear from your life, and some cycles never return. None of this is coincidence. It's all the universe's response to a shift in observation. But this reorganization process always begins with a silence. First, an inner relief comes. Matters don't feel as heavy, thoughts don't come as frequently, and emotions aren't as sharp. This is because the energy of observation is no longer working in that area. Then the universe steps in and begins to fill the void according to its own laws. The universe's principle of filling voids isn't just a physical reality. It operates even at the subtlest layers of consciousness. Letting go of a topic means allowing a new thought to come in its place. Letting go of a person allows a more harmonious energy to approach your life. Letting go of a cycle opens the door for a brand new timeline to emerge. People often describe this as, I have a lightness within me. This lightness is an indicator of the new vibration the universe places after the observation that has been withdrawn into the void. The universe is based on flow, not stability. As flow moves, it attracts vibrations that align with new frequencies. Therefore, when you consciously stop observing something, you don't banish it from your life. You dissolve its energy. This dissolved energy calls for a more harmonious one in its place. The power of withdrawing from observation is particularly evident in emotional cycles. For example, imagine struggling with a fear for years. You struggle to resolve it, constantly analyze it, and try to understand it. But every analysis, every thought, every remembrance is actually a continuation of observing that fear. This is why something new comes when you let go. This is why one door closes and another opens. This is why a new era begins when one phase ends. When you withdraw from observation, the universe declares, this space is now free, and chooses the most appropriate vibration to fill it. Your inner state determines what that vibration will be. If you are calm, open, and accepting, higher frequencies will fill the space. If you're afraid, chaos fills the void. The universe fills the void. How it fills depends on your frequency signature. The most interesting thing you'll realize in this process is this. You'll realize that many things in your life exist because you force them to exist. Some people remain because you try to hold on to them. Some problems persist because you follow them. Some cycles repeat because you keep looking. But when you withdraw from observation, all these structures collapse, and the universe fills the void with a new order. This order may seem vague at first, but it becomes clear over time, like a new shoreline emerging after the tide recedes. Withdrawing from observation is not an escape, nor is it surrender. It is the deepest form of conscious creation. When you choose not to observe a possibility, you allow a new possibility to arise in the universe. This permission is the beginning of creation. The universe's filling of the void is the result of creation. And when these two stages converge, your reality begins to change silently, invisibly, yet radically. This process in which the universe watches you and completes you is the first breath of a new timeline. The boundary between the collapsing reality and the emerging self is much thinner, much quieter, and often unnoticed than one might think. It's the very threshold that passes, for the collapse of a reality doesn't have to involve loud noises, dramatic scenes, or chaotic transformations. Sometimes, simply the loss of a thought's weight, the waning influence of a person, the breaking of an emotion's shell, or the cessation of a habit's call can signal the complete end of a timeline. However, this ending is often difficult to grasp because what one expects is a major change outside, while the true change takes place within, and the external world is merely a delayed reflection of it. In moments of collapse, when consciousness lets go of old observational patterns, reality trembles like a hologram, dissolves, and finally breaks where it can no longer support itself. But this rupture isn't something you lose. It's the void necessary for the emergence of what makes you who you are. The self is always born from a void. Because nothing new can grow in a filled space. Your old self was filled with habits, fears, past burdens, unresolved relationships, and the projections of others. This is why your true being was trapped in that crowd. Collapse is the silent withdrawal of this crowd from the scene. Some people describe this period as increasing loneliness, but it's not loneliness. It's an inner recovery in which consciousness returns to its own center. In this center, you feel more naked, more vulnerable, yet also more authentic. Silenced frequencies, repressed emotions, and hidden aspects are now being released. These are the first signs of your new self. The new self isn't born quickly. It often approaches with quiet, deep, and gentle steps. One morning you wake up and realize you can no longer bear a thought. One evening, you realize you no longer own a story that has been hurting you for years. One day, you wonder why you don't feel resentment towards someone who exhausts you. Suddenly, some of your goals don't seem as meaningful as they once did, because those goals were the goals of the old reality. The new self isn't born before reality collapses. It can't make space for itself. That's why collapse is always the beginning of creation. But creation begins not outside as you think, but within the inner layer of your consciousness. When the frequency of your thoughts changes, the vibration of your emotions softens, and your perspective can no longer hold the old story. That's when your new self takes its first breath. A collapse of reality isn't the outside world's fault or its punishment. It's your soul returning you to your own essential path. The letting go of the old is necessary for the new to approach. That's why behind every collapse is an invitation, a door opening to a more authentic, purer, more complete self. Passing through this door isn't difficult. The difficulty lies in letting go of the old. But what you can let go, the universe moves with you to fill that void. because the universe is programmed to support the emerging self. When you raise your own vibration, you notice the universe reshaping around you. You meet new people, new opportunities appear, new paths appear. These are all echoes of your new frequency. And finally, you realize reality didn't collapse. Only the part of it that could not support you collapsed. You didn't disappear. On the contrary, you have truly emerged for the first time. This realization constitutes a turning point in a person's life, because external reality is no longer an obstacle for you, but a reflection of your inner frequency. At this point, the self does not follow destiny, it creates destiny. Therefore, the self that is born is not a shadow of the old one. It is a completely new signature of existence. It is the first pure form of your essential frequency. And after this self is born, your reality is reestablished behind you. Because the collapsed reality is not lost, it is a stage opened for recreation. The born self is the new center of this stage. Thus, you become both the beginning and the end, the void behind the ended reality and the vibration that rises from that void. This vibration is you, in your reborn state, no longer beholden to any old story. Write in the comments, "I am recreating my reality now."